Andrew Tate's been vocal on Islam for a while.
Islam fixes a lot of the problems that men are currently facing.
You know, most of the problems you're facing currently with women can be solved by Islam.
I believe it's the last true religion on earth.
Call to prayer. Isn't that beautiful?
But before he was arrested in Romania under charges he denies of human trafficking and rape, Tate, who was the most Googled person of 2022, converted to Islam.
Guys, what you saw there was Andrew Tate with his friend, Muslim friend, and he's in the masjid.
Andrew Tate converted to Islam.
The Islam of Andrew Tate.
This news blew up in the YouTube sphere where Tate's conversion was the hot topic for many influential Muslim figures. But the reaction across the board was a bit mixed.
Watch this!
Islam is not a trend.
It took a non-Muslim to finally say what we have all been thinking.
Assalamu alaikum, my brother in faith. And
past is his past. Now he is Muslim.
Andrew Tate, not everybody is running to him with open arms, okay? There are people who are saying it's a publicity stunt.
And it's divided opinions among young men in the UK.
We saw the initial video of him praying in the mosque with a brother called Tam Khan. And then that kind of like confirmed that he actually has converted. So yeah, after that moment, when I saw that video, it was just pure happiness. Like I was very, very happy for the brother. In terms of his previous views about him being quite misogynistic, etc., I feel like that everyone's opinionated. Everyone can have their own opinion. But we can't really take him or judge him for that. But in my personal view, and I'm sure in the point of Islam, once someone kind of converts, we have no right to kind of judge them when they're past, they're reborn, they're new person. So me personally, I feel like I personally wouldn't look back on his past and judge him for that. And I feel like Muslims shouldn't as well, because we're not allowed to. Like, you kind of go on against what your religion teaches you. We should kind of respect him as a new person, as a new identity, as a Muslim now, and accept him as a brother.
I find myself in a more moderate position where I understand it's not my place to accept his conversion. That is his relationship between him and God. However, I also do understand the sentiments of wanting him to be held accountable for his past actions. When it comes down to some of the things that he has said, which include misogyny and victim blaming, these are very harmful rhetorics to platform. And I think the community needs to be very clear that these rhetorics are not from Islam. There have been many Muslim influencers platforming him, sharing spaces with him, and I don't personally feel like they've held him to account.
One of the first people that Tate spoke to about his conversion was controversial YouTuber Muhammad Hijab.
Quite frankly, Allah has already wiped away your sins.
Yeah.
Any statement that you made before about women or anything that you've done with women before, once again, it's not my business to judge you upon that.
He did clarify some of the things that were most problematic in his output in the past.
What are some of the comments that they accuse you of making, and what is the context of these comments?
Yeah, so the two that they accuse me of most is where I said a woman is a man's property, which is the first one.
Yeah.
And the second one that they try and get me with is where I said a woman should bear some responsibility for being sexually assaulted.
Certainly there is work still to be done. It doesn't mean just because he has become Muslim that everything that he gets a get out of jail free card. No pun intended. Most imams on many of the same issues would have a view, maybe many rabbis would have a view, many priests would have a view, similar if not identical to Tate's when it comes to the nuclear family, when it comes to gender roles, when it comes to so many of these diagnoses. They would have the same view. They don't have the same charisma as him. They don't have the same way of articulating themselves as he does. And as such, obviously, he's going to get more traction. He's made what's mainstream in the world more mainstream in the West. That's all he's done.
Javad Hashmi, a PhD candidate in Islamic Studies and Director of Research at MPAC, thinks that Muslim influencers giving Tate a platform could be problematic.
I would say that Andrew Tate represents everything that opposes our religion and the religious disposition. But unfortunately, he's being lauded as this kind of example for young Muslim men.
He flaunts his kind of hedonistic lifestyle, which is all about wealth, women, cars. Makes it very interesting and paradoxical why it is that he A, gravitated toward Islam, and B, why Muslims or young Muslim men gravitated toward him. These kind of what I call the Af-right Dawa bros, they were already saying and doing reaction videos to Andrew Tate and saying, look, not everything he says is wrong. It's actually a lot of things he's saying is correct, but he just was Muslim and then he converted. So that was, the last step that they demanded from him, basically. So Andrew Tate benefits from that because he's kind of ingratiating himself to the dawn of the Sheikh al-Internet, which is Muhammad Hijab. And meanwhile, Muhammad hijab is really validated, because now you have this guy who's the most Googled man on earth, apparently, at a certain point in time. The first stop he's making after his conversion is to Muhammad hijab's show or podcast. So it's a bilateral relationship. I think the most worrisome thing is how deeply misogynistic both sides are.
Anja Mahina worry that this is problematic and that young Muslims will try to draw narratives between Tate's misogynistic views and Islam.
Muslim men, non-Muslim men really online talk about the role of the woman. And in Western cultures, we always saw this as something thrown at us as Muslims or from the east of the world. Those people are very oppressed, they oppress their women. It's no longer that. This has become such a universal thing where platforms like Andrew Tate's and his followers, Muslim or non-Muslim, are all sharing this thing about men have their place in society and women have their place in society. And fair play if you want, but take that argument. But the kind of derogatory way in that they're saying that where women's place is, that's really dangerous. And I think it emboldens those boys, those young boys who have no scholarly knowledge, no kind of Islamic background. They're Muslims, but they have these misogynistic opinions, and so they filter that out through religion.
That's why God told us men to have 4 wives, because they knew we needed large families and that women are slow. Allah understands. God understands. Do you have 4 wives yet?
Nah, I got none.
You know, if you got yourself a nice Islamic wife, she wouldn't cheat on you, she'd cook for you, she'd look after you, she wouldn't have an OnlyFans. You know, most of the problems you're facing currently with women can be solved by Islam.
The reality is those are not Muslim views or Islamic views in any way, shape or form. And like everything with young men, wherever we're in spaces with young men who are exposed to this rhetoric, it's up to them to be able to question it, critique it, and definitely seek knowledge where they can find credible sources for what actually Islam is about, what Islam does say about women.
The reason why it's important to define exactly what we mean by misogyny is because, for example, conservative Muslims, Jewish people, for example, Christian people, some conservative Christians, with some difference, of course, and within those religions there's difference as well, they would consider, for example, a differentiation when it comes to gender roles, that the man has certain roles that the woman doesn't, that there are some things that a man should do or the responsibilities that a woman shouldn't have. And to modern day feminist proponents, that could be considered to be a form of discrimination.
Women's job always was procreation, to look after the family and to look after the man. That's all that they had to do. And the man would go out there and risk his life and spend his time building the modern world. Men are still out here building the modern world. But when they come home now, the girl's like, oh, why should I cook for you? I think women are failing in their role. I think women are failing.
You know, the reason why Andrew Tate is picking up traction is because he is just going with the tide, in the sense that he is saying what the majority of the world is saying, but the West has forgotten. That is really why he's become so popular.
And his popularity amongst his fans is clear, with some following Tate in his conversion to Islam.
You take a shower today, brother. MashaAllah, my brother. He's our brother. Inshallah, Andrew Tate, our brother as well, inshallah.
How do you feel now?
I feel very satisfied.
So you can just repeat after me. Ashhadu an la.
Well, what made you, gravitated you to the message of Islam?
Tate and them, they all talk about it. He's like,
oh, you're a Tate fan? Hey, free the top G, man.
But is Andrew Tate really a role model for young Muslims?
I feel like since Tate's conversion, a lot of people have changed their mindset on Islam. They see Islam more positive. I feel like you can't convert to a religion, or revert, I should say, to a religion for a specific person. You got to understand the religion. So I feel like they probably looked at his views and it kind of switched the initial thought of Islam, and it kind of led him to go more into it, look more into it, research more into it, and then kind of use that as a way for them to kind of revert into the religion.
Especially if you're inspired by him becoming a Muslim, go to your local mosque and have a conversation with someone. You don't need to spend your life online looking at what Andrew Tate is doing and then becoming him.
We don't know what Andrew Tate is going to do in the next 5 years. He might apostate from the religion of Islam. He may become a feminist. He may be, anything can happen. So all I'm saying is following such a person would bring about a series of problems. And so instead we would say to Muslim people in particular to follow the Prophet Muhammad, men and women as well. But then again, we would say Andrew Tate is an individual who is manifesting a series of attributes which men have been deprived of seeing in and having role model to them. Gallantness, courageousness, great articulation. He embodies a lot of what could be seen classically as like, you know, the intellectual warrior type.
I think this is our Andrew Tate moment in which we really need to take stock and reassess. Maybe we should start thinking less of quantity and more of quality, and that it's, we have a lot of people convert to Islam and then within a year, 2 years, 3 years, leave the religion. But that's very different than what we're seeing now. We're seeing people who are making the slide into Islam because that understanding of Islam is just validating viewpoints that they already had, these misogynistic viewpoints that they already have. I think that's a very negative phenomenon. Somewhat complex, but ultimately I think it's a bad thing that you have these people who are very problematic converting to Islam. I think that's only going to make things worse.
Andrew Tate's version of Islam is not Islam. And I think that they need to understand that. And anybody who's looking into Andrew Tate and thinking of taking up the Shahada or taking the faith in earnest needs to really, really do some research and ask themselves some really serious questions, like why are they following Andrew Tate in the first place?